But one day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The newest show sensation streaming throughout the multiverse. Your hang place in cyberspace for paranormal news and views. Taboo Topics with Gene Broida.
Welcome everyone to Taboo Topics with Gene Broida. I'm your host, Gene Broida, also known as Lightworker 111. Beaming to you from sea to shining sea, across the Americas and the world, every Sunday night between 7 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States on my Taboo Topics with Gene Broida YouTube channel at tabootopics.life/shows and multicast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. Welcome all. Panelists on this show, Taboo Topics with Gene Broida, read news articles about paranormal events and conspiracies and other hush-hush subjects that we all probe further before moving on to the next taboo topic. And on today's show, please welcome guest panelist Julie Parker, hypnotherapist and UFO ET experiencer. We had scheduled Dr. Chuck Kennedy, a splendid fellow, another Psi researcher. He has had life happen to him and he is unable to join us this show, but he is welcome in the future, and I know we will be featuring him and his splendid work with paranormal research, putting science to metaphysics. This is very exciting stuff. But for now, we are blessed, entirely blessed to have Julie Parker with us. And Julie, please take a few minutes, take as long as you like. Tell everybody in our global audience about yourself. Share some insights and tell us what brings you here to this paranormal roundtable, other than my personal invitation, of course.
Hi, Gene. So my name is Julie, as Gene had mentioned, and I'm from Alberta, Canada. I'm a quantum healing hypnotherapist. So that's QHHT, which was developed by Delores Cannon. Delores Cannon worked in this for over 45 years. And she's written 18 books. Some of my favorite books are actually the Convoluted Universe series, The Three Waves of Volunteers, The Custodians, Conversations with Nostradamus. Anyhow, I'd had a multidimensional experience happen to me. And the very next day I found Delores Cannon's work. And I've been doing it ever since. It's been 4 years now.
I know people want to hear about your experience that put you on to Delores Cannon's work. I know I do. I never tire of this story.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting experience. What happened was I had something that might have resembled a near-death experience, except I didn't nearly die. I was at a crossroads in my life. I went to bed on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was sitting there with my book and my cup of tea, my cat. And I was reading the book, And there was absolutely nothing. I don't do marijuana, I don't do plant medicine, anything like that. Didn't drink any wine. I was literally sitting on my bed reading this book. I can't even tell you what the title was now. Anyhow, I ended up in another dimension. I had not fallen asleep. I was in another dimension, that place that we all come from, where our souls reside. It was a place of love and light, beyond words to explain, because there was like harmonic, there was color, and I knew where I was. I knew that I was home. That was the strongest sensation. I was home, and the love that was there was extraordinary. The love is in our best moment on this planet. We can't scratch the surface of that love that I was experiencing there. I don't know how long I was there. The last time I had looked at the clock, it was like 10:30, and then it was quarter to 11. And somewhere after, or pardon me, quarter to 11, sometime after that was when I was in that space. And I don't know how I got there. I didn't go down a tunnel. I didn't, I almost die. I didn't go through any pearly gates. I was just there. As I was there, I had the distinct impression of a presence that was probably what I would have perceived to be to my left. Felt like I was being guided that way. But then it was like 3D Julie consciousness suddenly became aware of this. And she was going, oh my God, did I die? Am I dead? Boom, out. Sitting on my bed. About 10 after 11 now. I couldn't tell you if I was there for 20 minutes or if I was there for a nanosecond. But this experience changed every single thing in my life. The life I knew before that moment was completely erased and gone. Every so-called belief that I had had, everything that I thought I knew was completely erased. Now, I'm somebody, I don't watch Star Trek, I don't watch Star Wars, I'm not into any sci-fi, I'm not into fantasy. So for something like this to happen to me, I was 48 at the time, to just happen out of the blue, I never saw it coming. I don't even know how it unfolded. It was that fluid.
You were basically sitting around minding your own business, is what it sounds like.
I was sitting on my bed reading my book.
You were in full waking state consciousness.
Fully awake.
You weren't on drugs. You weren't boozed up.
Nope, wasn't meditating, nothing. I was fully awake when this happened. It was that fluid and that fast.
And then what happened?
Then I cried for 3 days. It was so profound. It changes every single thing, every cell, everything has changed. You cannot get back into your old life. I phoned my kids and a few close friends, the only people I thought that wouldn't think I was insane. And I still think they did think I went insane, but anyhow, the next morning though, I wept for 3 days. It was the most beautiful, most profound thing that goes beyond anything. We don't even have those sensations here. We are so limited.
So when you say you wept, my sense is that you were not sad, but perhaps overloaded with emotions. How would you describe this crying mechanism?
It was overload. It was so profound. Everything in my life had changed in that moment, and I knew it. And, over the next few hours after that experience, because I was up most of the night going, oh my God, what just happened? Like, what just happened? Like, I was sitting on my bed reading a book. But what was interesting was, like, when you have a dream and then that dream fades away, I could feel some of that enhanced sensation in my conscious state. And then I could feel it start to fade away. And I didn't want it to. We all go to that place. It's home, And when people speak of near-death experiences, I think sometimes people do it in vivid dreams. I have no idea why. I was fully conscious when that happened. But then sometimes I think the reason it did happen when I was so fully conscious is because I would not have believed it if I had been asleep. I would have dismissed it as a dream, right?
How long ago did this happen?
This happened in 2015, June of 2015. And then for about 3 months, it was like I was left alone to digest this and be with it. And then that was when I started to have contact. And the contact started with clairaudience, with a voice speaking to me. But I'd say within a matter of probably a month or so, it had moved into telepathy and other experiences.
And the next day, you found Delores Cannon's work.
I found Delores Cannon's work. I didn't barely sleep that night. I was sitting there in front of my laptop trying to figure out, how do you Google this? What was that? I didn't even know what to do. And I was looking up everything. I was looking up near-death experience. I was looking up Kundalini awakening. What was that? And
you wanted to know what had happened to you, right?
Exactly.
You wanted some explanations. You wanted some answers.
I did. And I had nowhere to look. Absolutely everything I was coming across did not resonate. And so then I was like, aha, I'm going to look on YouTube. And I opened up YouTube.
To the internet.
I opened up YouTube, and the recommended page that opens up by default, Delores Cannon's video was dead center in that page. And it was her video, I believe it was Between Death and Life, was her video. And I was just, oh my God, what's this? And as soon as I'd watched that video, I mean, everything resonated so strongly, and off I went, right?
Right. And I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag any further, because I know you're going to be pursuing this topic tonight. And I want to welcome anyone who's just tuning in to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida and my very interesting firsthand experiencer guest, Julie Parker. We had Dr. Chuck Kennedy scheduled. He's unable to be with us, but I will reschedule him for another show. And welcome to the Sunday, April 19th, 2020 edition of Taboo Topics with Jean Broida on my YouTube channel of the same name. Please head over there to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida on YouTube. Click the little subscribe button. And if you click the little bell next to that, you will get live broadcast advisories. So thanks very much for that. Be a founder of my YouTube channel. We are going places. So who am I? I'm your host, Jean Broida. I have had an interest in UFOs and other paranormal phenomenon, particularly ESP, since I was about 14 years old. I suspect I had a childhood ET experience that I've well repressed. And this is why I invite hypnotherapists onto my show. My subconscious is issuing a cry for help, perhaps. But in any event, I have looked into the topic of UFOs all my life and was convinced at a very young age, at about age 14, that UFOs are not a matter of belief. They're a matter of certainty, at least on the part of the US government, which has worked very, very hard to convince everyone else you must be crazy if you believe in UFOs. And by couching the existence of UFOs as a matter of belief, in other words, taking the topic from the realm of science, physics and metaphysics, into the realm of belief, that's philosophy or religion. It's a classic ploy to obscure what's really going on. And what's really going on is some very hard science. And I've documented some of this hard science and some of my conspiracy synthesis, where we're bringing disparate thoughts together, disparate research, different phenomenon and events, bringing them together to stitch a cohesive tapestry of truth. That's why I'm about truth. I'm a skeptic. I don't believe everything I see or read. And I also question what I experience myself, as any good skeptic will do. But my research shows me that I know my government believes in UFOs and has been documenting them since the 1940s at least. So if you head over to Amazon, you can check out my book, Unknown Objects, the Top 10 U.S. UFO Cases, and I drill it down for you. We start at the end of World War II with the Foo Fighters. We carry on through some very notable cases, including the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. Talk about Roswell, what happened there, although everybody knows something happened there. Something went down in Roswell, but what? And again, this is like an onion with multiple layers. And once you actually get into the story, you find there's more and more and more and more to this. And when you look at the extents to which the federal government of the United States went and continues to go to cover up UFO truth, you have to wonder, well, I have to wonder, and other people are wondering, why? Why to go to this great expense and effort? It's about power. It's about control. So after you read Unknown Objects, the Top 10 US UFO Cases, and other similar books, you begin to understand why you must be crazy not to believe in UFOs. And that's the drum that I beat, and I beat it on this show, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. I am a reporter. I write daily articles for such publications as thedailyconspiracy.com. I look for 3 sources at least before I write anything up. I'm acutely aware that fake news exists on both sides of every aisle imaginable everywhere. And I am interested as a light worker in shedding the light of truth on the obscurity of lies and deception. That's what I'm about. That's what I do. My background includes a master's degree in computer science. So I'm actually a scientist, schooled in the scientific method, testing hypotheses. And I have an undergraduate background in psychology, language, and education. I am all about communication. And my astrological sun sign is Gemini, the flibberty gibbet, okay, the person who likes to be the center of attention, likes to talk. I'm not shy that way. And I've always enjoyed public discourse, civilized discourse. I'm not interested in name calling. I'm not interested in bad logic. I'm interested in the truth and being respectful, even when I don't agree with someone else's opinion or their reality. I don't have to agree. It's okay. And I put it to you viewers and listeners that it's okay. We can politely and in utter civility agree to disagree. There's nothing wrong with that. That is how people evolve. What's one way people evolve in consciousness? And what's interesting is that right now around the world, truth seekers and starseeds are waking up, similar to guest Julie here. In 2015, a lot of people, including me, had, in my case, it was a second wave of awakening in 2014. This period of 2014, 2015 seems rather significant and if not pivotal in awakening of starseeds. That's people from perhaps other planetary systems who elected to come to Earth to help raise consciousness as big changes are afoot, big changes as recorded in Hopi Native American prophecy and around the world, talking about not only shifting paradigms, but perhaps also a shifting reality. And some of these theories also touch upon biblical books such as Revelation. I am not a Bible scholar, but I have read Revelation. I've read actually the whole Bible, as my mother invited me to do as a child, saying you should read all the great texts. You should read that, the Quran, you should read Buddhist texts, you should read all the texts and make an informed decision about what you believe. And I put to listeners of this show, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, open your minds. Don't take my word for it. Don't take the word of my guests. Go and see for yourself. Do your own research, time allowing, I get that, okay? But don't be naive. Naivety is, in my opinion, very foolish, especially in this age of the internet, where we can get a whole lot of information at the click of a mouse. It doesn't get any better than this. And I grouse about certain technologies as being intrusive and anti-American, anti-civil liberties, and I do. I believed Edward Snowden when he came forward and said the NSA is collecting data on everybody. We know that's true now. And he published the PRISM Project PRISM, which is the go-to, the how to do it, the tech spec on snooping on everybody. It's not that the NSA is actively listening to every single conversation. This is much more far-reaching. Conversations are recorded for posterity. We don't know if they're ever thrown away. And woe betide you if you become a person of interest somewhere down the road, like in one of those conspiracy movies that I've seen in the past. Enemy of the State, I think it was, where a person becomes a person of interest. And now all the computers in the world, all the closed caption televisions in the world are targeting this one person because they become interesting to the government. This is what we don't want in a free society. We don't want to turn into China with face recognition everywhere. And social shaming as well, public shaming of jaywalkers. I've written about all this stuff. This is not fiction, this is fact. So what's incredible is how many people are realizing that we have been told a pack of lies. We, the people of the United States and Canada and other countries around the world, have been told a pack of lies. I call it the big lie. And in my opinion, the big lie really started with the UFO cover-up. And so many things attached to it, so many things synthesized with that. That's my opinion, okay? I'm not asking you to believe it or disbelieve it. I'm asking you to listen and decide for yourself. And as people are listening and deciding for themselves, it would appear that consciousnesses beyond the earth, the material earth, are contacting people, such as our guest today, and we'll be hearing more about that. And you just never know when you might be contacted. The point is that whether you're contacted or not, a lot of people are receiving information through their higher selves, through their subconscious minds, bringing it to consciousness, realizing things are not as they seem on the surface. And that's why I started this show, so that all of us here on the panel can dig into topics and shed some light in the dark corners of reality as we know it. And we know it because that's what we've been told. So with that said, let's start the show, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. And I am thrilled to kick us off with the first article of this April 19th, 2020 show. And it is something that I wrote very recently. It has not even been published yet, but it's a sneak preview. It is called U.S. Air Force Abducted Human Woman Aboard Crashed UFO in 1971. So this is a report of a UFO crash where a human survivor was found at the crash site. She was alive. It was a woman. And here we go. Alien spacecraft have been plummeting to the Earth's surface for ages. In the United States, the first documented crash is thought to be the one at Cape Girardeau, Missouri in 1941. As I covered previously, in that case, 3 bodies, not human, were recovered at the Missouri crash site located near the mighty Mississippi River. Ufologist Leonard Stringfield investigated that case and reported, quote, "It was hard to tell if these ETs were wearing clothes, but they were covered head to foot in what looked like wrinkled aluminum foil," unquote. The 4-foot-tall beings, this is at the Missouri, Cape Girardeau, the 4-foot-tall beings fit the classic description of gray aliens with large oval-shaped eyes, no nose, no ears, just holes in their heads, no lips, and small slits for mouths. A military officer at the crash site imposed what may have been the first official U.S. UFO cover-up, advising witnesses to keep their mouths shut about the incident after confiscating all photographs taken at the site. Cuban-born Albert Rosales immigrated to the United States in 1966. While living in Cuba, the young man experienced paranormal incidents that continued as an adult after relocating to the United States. Rosales began collecting data on close encounters from worldwide sources in the late 1980s. His database contains over 18,000 entries and is updated and corrected daily. The lifelong investigator has published numerous books on the alien-human connection. One singular case in Rosales' vast collection of UFO cases involved a California resident named Lorraine Dvorak Cordini. Sometime during the summer of 1971, a small UFO shaped like a mushroom had crashed near Edwards Air Force Base. The military report indicated that this UFO was a dull gunmetal gray color that measured about 10 to 12 feet in diameter and 5 to 7 feet tall. It had greenish lights and no windows. There were no markings, but the exterior seemed to be scratched. The UFO had no seams and seemed to be molded in one piece. The texture was smooth. Eyewitness Debbie Clayton in California said that a loud roaring sound followed by a loud crash got her attention. Outside, she could see a cloud of dust several blocks away, so she walked to the crash site for a closer look. Other residents were already on the scene, studying the craft. Cordini had been on board with 3 gray humanoid beings. One of them was alive too. The U.S. Air Force swooped in to cart off the UFO, dead bodies, and the 2 survivors, one human, one alien, and took them all to Edwards Air Force Base nearby. The military arrived, weapons drawn. An Air Force officer ripped a camera from the hands of a curious onlooker and smashed it without trying to remove the film. Military personnel instructed the civilians who had gathered to leave or they would be arrested. Thus, shielded from close public scrutiny, the military men covered the craft with a large canvas that had cables attached to it, used to lift the object onto a flatbed truck. Once secured and hidden from view, the UFO was spirited away and never disclosed by the U.S. Air Force to national newspapers or radio stations. People were told that a technical malfunction had caused the loud crash near Edwards Air Force Base, and that was certainly true for the UFO. Cordini recalled later that the pod-like craft she was aboard came from a mothership in space and was heading to Earth to return her. She was wearing a pink bodysuit that fit tightly. Then the UFO crashed, and the abductee found herself suddenly standing amid the wreckage. She saw one dead alien far to her left, barely visible from where she stood. The second dead alien was about 20 feet in front of her. A military person seemed to be kicking the alien's dead body, perhaps to make sure it wasn't still alive. The third alien crew member was alive and stood about 20 feet from Cordini, looking dazed, confused, and disoriented, as did she. In this state of post-traumatic shock, Cordini felt her arms jerk backwards as a military man grabbed them and handcuffed her. While being hauled off, the captain aboard the mothership, a 6-foot-tall humanoid female with short brown hair and a long white gown, communicated to Cordini by putting an image in her mind. The ET leader said she was sorry she couldn't help the human and alien crash victims because if they did, they would be detected by the U.S. military and captured or killed. Their spacecraft seized for reverse engineering. Other aliens with the mothership's captain shared her emotions, frustration, and helplessness. Cordini's last conscious memory was being thrown into the back seat of a black limousine. Under medical hypnosis later, she remembered that she had been laying out on a cold metal table in a hangar. 3 military men stood to the left of the table. Another uniformed person stood at the right side of Lorraine's head, and to his left was an alien, described by Cordini as having a pumpkin-shaped head. That alien was about 4 feet tall, with a bulbous brown body. Cordini had seen the alien before as a child, when he dangled outside a window wearing a deep-sea diver's suit, or perhaps it was a spacesuit. The next thing Cordini remembered was being yanked off the metal table and being dragged outside the hangar. She was greeted by flashing red lights that she thought were the police. The military men put Cordini on a bus and transported her to San Francisco, stranding the lost, disoriented woman they had abducted from the UFO crash site. Now, Cordini's account doesn't state that the aliens who were returning her to Earth were friendly, but they were sympathetic after the U.S. Air Force abducted her forcibly, tossing her around like a rag doll for their above top secret purposes. So I put it to you, Julie, and also listeners out in viewerland, here is an astonishing case where not only did UFO aliens abduct a female human, they were apparently in due diligence returning her to her home, and the UFO crashed. We know that the United States Air Force was working on radar to crash UFOs to help capture and capture bodies and survivors and collect the hardware for reverse engineering. We know this from insider accounts. We don't know it from any physical evidence because the United States government has appropriated all of that. And anybody who has any physical evidence winds up dead and their evidence is appropriated again. So you got to be very careful when you actually have physical evidence, as Bill Cooper found out, as many other people who had physical evidence who are now dead found out. And that's no way to prove a hypothesis, by the way. As a scientist, I will tell you, a lack of evidence proves nothing. But there is evidence in terms of documentation that the United States government and other world governments have been collecting UFO hardware and beings and interrogating live beings and waging war basically on alien intelligences. Is that prudent? We are not being consulted. We, the people, are not being consulted. We are being led down the garden path to think that we're crazy, to think that any such thing exists. Now, Julie, I see you, but the others don't see you, nodding your head in agreement. What is your take on all this?
Well, first off, I don't think that UFO crashed. I think it was crashed. I mean, really, these beings and their ability to get around. I don't know how it would have happened, but that's an extraordinary story. I mean, that really is. As soon as you spoke about the bulbous head, I've actually, one time in my own experiences, witnessed something that's how it looked to me, and I didn't know how to describe it because the head was rather almost like lumpy looking or something.
I have to tell you, when I read that Cordini recognized the alien from a childhood experience and that this being had appeared dangling outside her window, upside down, wearing some kind of protective suit that she, as a child, I would imagine, described as a deep sea diver suit. Yeah. Well, what does a deep sea diver wear? They have a full body suit with a helmet on top.
Yeah.
A rounded helmet on top. And I have to tell you that created a visceral reaction in me, visceral in my guts. Okay, I had my subconscious responded to this with a physical reaction that, wow, that seems very, very familiar. And as I said before, I have a feeling that I was abducted as a very young child before I could speak very much and articulate what had happened. And I've read, for what it's worth, that many people say they were abducted as 3- and 4-year-olds just because they couldn't talk with complete sentences to adults. And at that age, of course, kids have rife imaginations, very vivid imaginations. They believe in make-believe, bless their hearts, because woe betide us when we lose that as adults, frankly. So I'm not here to tell you definitively that that's what happened to me. It's just that I resonated, which is a real trendy word now. I resonated to that image that this being that's unexplainable, basically. What is this thing doing hanging upside down outside my window? This defies reason, defies the laws of physics, defies common sense. What is up with that? What's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting you say that, because I had some experiences that have happened throughout my childhood that I didn't know were experiences till I started having so many experiences the last 5 years. And so I'm still currently in a time of actually kind of going back to those things that happened in life where you go, what was that? You know, like the glowy light being sitting at the end of my bed and that kind of thing, that I would have perceived to be an angel at that age. But who was that really, you know?
I thought this account was notable because, and I suspect, Jules, that you're correct, that your hunch that the U.S. Air Force brought this craft down.
Oh, yeah.
It's certainly possible. I'm not going to even guess on the likelihood of that. There's no point. But whether or not it was a natural crash, so-called, or an artificial one brought down, you can bet that by that date, the U.S. military was accomplished in rushing out to crash sites with specialists in crash retrieval in hazmat suits, because they noticed there's often a radiation toxicity at these crash sites, and collecting all the evidence. But in this case, some of the evidence included a human woman. I'm sure no one expected that. And she had a much worse fate, apparently, at the hands of the U.S. military than she did at the hands of her so-called abductors, who were friendly, apparently. Now, we understand that people can be friendly when they're being deceptive. We know that. But nowhere in Rosales' description could I find the witness, Cordini, saying that she'd been tortured or subjected to harsh medical testing. There, unfortunately, that wasn't part of the documentation that I read or encountered here. I would like to contact Rosales and get more about this, if he even knows. There's a limit to what people can document. I get that, but there has to be so much more to this story. And many people have said they went willingly on craft. They were curious, or they felt kinship. Many women have come forward and said, I volunteered for a hybridization program, and they took my ova, and I was a collaborator with that, and they hybridized with their own sperm or somebody else's sperm, perhaps a combo of human alien sperm, and that they are breeding generations of hybrids. To what end, it's not entirely clear. I'm a little nervous about that, frankly, especially since a lot of them look very much like us humans and can pass for humans. What is really going on? The aliens typically don't talk much about their agenda. They have words of caution for humans. Stop trashing the planet, stop exploding nukes, love each other. Those are the big three messages that I get from experiencers and from my own research. That is not telling us what they are about. So what about you, Julie? Have you encountered people's messages from ETs and why they're doing what they're doing?
You know, it's really interesting because one of the things you touched on was whether or not, you know, people are being abducted or whether they volunteer, kind of thing. When you speak of kinship, my contact has felt like that. My contact has always, it has never been scary. It was startling because it was foreign to my experiences prior to the first 48 years. It's interesting though, because when people are in hypnosis, some people, you know, they get into that state and it is a kinship, and they are Hybridization has actually come up in sessions, a number of things, being on different craft. But the other thing that's really interesting too, though, is I've had some clients where they're in their session and they've viewed something that's very unfamiliar, and that, I've asked them to describe what they're viewing, and they say a monster. And I'll say, okay, is that actually a monster, or is that something that just looks really different to you? Right? Let yourself feel that. Your resonance will tell you, trust your resonance. And sure enough, it might be a being that looks very distinctly different, very foreign to them, very foreign to their frame of reference. But when they allow themselves, to be in the moment, the being looks scary, but it's not a monster. It's just something not familiar.
Well, since from childhood in the West, in the United States, certainly, from childhood, children are exposed to fairy tales that feature giants that eat humans. Yeah. They see science fiction shows on TV and in movies. Yeah. And typically the aliens are demonized. Yeah. Typically, not always, but typically they are demonized, and the bad guys, but not always. There are certain directors who are well disposed toward ETs. And I know everybody listening who's into this genre will understand who I'm talking about. Okay. So from the get-go, children get a conflicting message about the nature of extraterrestrial beings. Yeah. They look hideous, therefore they must be hideous. Look at the story of Beauty and the Beast, as retold several times by Disney, okay? But this is a classic fairy tale, all right? Disney didn't write this story. This story goes way, way back, okay? Yeah. And this notion that, in this case, the Beast was a human hunchback. Well, no, that's another story. The Beast was a beastly looking person, but the idea is that ugly people you should be afraid of ugly people. I mean, there's several messages going on here at the subconscious level to children that, in my opinion, are very unhealthy, okay? Yeah. Monstrous beings should be judged not by their appearance, but by their behavior. And if you use that yardstick, then we have a lot of monsters in politics right now. And I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to get into a political discussion here. But politics does influence the paranormal unquestionably, and has done since Cape Girardeau, 1941 in Missouri, where the military said, we cannot have the general public know that UFOs are here. They have alien occupants who are mortal. We can't have it. There'll be panic in the streets. That's what they first said. The men in charge, the white men in charge, said there'll be panic in the streets if people understand there are UFOs. And they spent 70 plus years convincing people there are none. And if you believe it, you're crazy. So that's pretty deceitful. That's a big lie. Now the lie is, oh yeah, the UFOs exist because the Navy pilots have seen so many Navy pilots have seen so many UFOs. Yeah. They're boiling over with this. They've had to suppress this information, and even their crewmates ridicule them. That's how deep this propaganda goes. Their peers, their cohorts, their co-workers are laughing at them for reporting honestly what they saw, because their crewmates also believe these guys must be crazy to believe in UFOs, even though it's on radar. We've had astronauts admit, we've had all kinds of people admit. Why is this even a debate anymore? And that's why a lot of UFO researchers are pivoting toward you, Julie, toward people like you who've had experiences and are talking about them. And we had talked before the show about social stigma, negative social stigma, about being pigeonholed as a wackadoodle-doo because you've had an experience and you'll admit to it, for shame. Everybody else, for shame, for judging people harshly, for one thing. And as a skeptic, I say, I don't take everything at face value, but I try not to deny someone else's experience. Yeah. I may think their experience doesn't hold true for me in my framework of reality, but I don't want to say to anybody else, I'm going to invalidate your experience because I think you're a big fat liar. And I don't want to say that because I know my government is the big fat liar. Okay. In the equation. I
Absolutely.
know
And
that that's the
everything,
case.
everything is perception. And when I had that first initial experience that kicked the door wide open, that was the thing that was pounded home. Everything is perception. We're just perceiving this reality around us. We're perceiving this sense of time and this linear order to our lives, but that's not actually reality.
What were your takeaways from that waking near death experience? I don't even know if I want to call it that. Is that what you call it?
It wasn't a near death experience.
You weren't near death. You had an experience. You had an out of body experience, right?
Exactly. Like people that have had near death experiences shared the same thing as I did, I think, in many respects, about the energy and everything. I also think too, like, you know, some people might see something that looks like a traditional heaven. I didn't. This was a place of frequency and energy. This was things, I don't have the scientific language to back it up because that's just not who I am. But I know what that was, a sense of knowing that. Absolutely. I know what that was. And for the first time in my life at the age of 48, I was always shy about wanting to put my opinions out there, and, you know, shy to say something that's going to sound too weird. But I had no fear about speaking out about that because I knew that was the true reality. All of this, it's a facade. It's a play. It's school.
This is Maya illusion, right?
That's right.
That the Taoists talk about.
That was the reality.
Anything that appears solid is actually a collection of very fast vibrating molecules, which are composed of atoms, which are composed of subatomic particles, which are all reduced to matter and energy, which apparently are never created and never destroyed.
And where our consciousness is focused. I mean, Delores Cannon used to say that at her conferences. She would say, you just perceive that there's something outside that door, that the hallway is there and the carpet and all these things, but it's not actually there. And I had a couple experiences, actually, probably at least two, where I remember the one time, and it happened spontaneously. And I think the reason I'm grateful those things happen spontaneously is I would never believe them otherwise. And I had actually just sat on my bed. I was about to do something, and then I just kind of laid back for a moment. And I closed my eyes. And at that time, the contact was coming very heavily. There was just experiences left, right, and center. I couldn't even keep track. I'd lay back on my bed for a moment, just contemplating something, but I opened my eyes a moment later, and everything, the ceiling, the walls, was liquid, except for directly over my head where I was focused. Now, I'm not talking about having my eyes scrunched shut and then you suddenly open them or something, but it was like I was being shown something. And I'd only seen it once or twice in very close proximity. It's never happened again, even when I've tried to make it happen. So I feel like very much there's been a lot of breadcrumbs showing me things, demonstrating things, you know, so that I can perceive it.
When you went to that place, were there other consciousnesses there? Other beings?
Oh, everybody was there. You were there.
I was there. Everybody was there.
Everybody was there. We were all part of this. We were not identified as bodies or anything. Everybody was there. Even the ones that annoy you, they were there too.
And what were we doing?
It was
were we just being, hanging out?
It was a beingness. That's the thing. The love that I felt there, which, like I said, in our finest moment on this planet, we can't come close. But it was also a perfection. From that experience onward, I have understood to the core of my being, there's no accidents, there's no coincidences. Everything is divine. Even if we look at the chaos of the current events and people having to stay home and everything, no, there is a higher, you know, there's
a higher order, a higher purpose.
There is.
If I can put words in your mouth.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. There is. I need more coffee. that there is a higher purpose to everything. It's just our perception is so limited. And early on, after I had that initial experience, one of the first sequences I was shown is I was shown an incident in my life. And I was shown just like this, very close in, how we perceive our life around us, the people around us. But then what they did is they panned me out from this incident. They panned me out. And as they panned me out, I saw the intricacy of every single interaction. I could see people that are not known to my life. I was panned out to show that this moment, this thing that I perceived as an issue was not at all. Everything is divine. And that's a word I use a lot. Divine.
I love
Everything
that
has
word,
a purpose.
divine. Actually, I use it a bit myself. I talk about divine source, divine inspiration. I credit a lot of my intuition, well, all of my intuition, I credit to divine source.
Yeah.
We're all spiritual beings, I'm sure of it.
Absolutely. And everything that we're going through in our day-to-day life, it is perception. And we're master manifestors. I mean, if we've got a lot of chaos going on in our life, then it's time to sit back and take a pause, because there's something about our thoughts that has brought that to us.
So that's basically the law of attraction, isn't it?
It is.
What you put out is what you draw back in. And in Wicca, it's a threefold effect. Whatever you put out as energy will return to you 3 times as strong. So with that in mind, be kind.
Yeah,
because you'll get kindness in return threefold. If you're a mean, nasty person, that's the kind of energy that you'll get back.
Yeah.
And you know, it's when I speak that way, it's a bit glib, because very few people are completely mean and nasty, and very few people are completely light and bright. Okay. Most people are a blend, a mixture, but we all have this internal monologue going. And I've been listening to Marissa Peer, noted British psychologist, hypnotherapist, and motivational speaker. And she talks a lot about ourselves. She and other people talk about self-talk. And beware your negative self-talk. Be nice to yourself first. And once you're nice to yourself and say nice things about yourself to yourself, it's much easier to say nice things to other people about themselves, because you have some security that you at least love yourself.
Absolutely.
And for people who've had a lot of trauma and difficult lives, this is very therapeutic. People who've never had a lot of trauma, who came from normal, well-adjusted families, which I can't even imagine, they don't get this at all. They're like, well, doesn't everybody roll that way? Isn't everybody within normal limits? And I'm like, no, there's a whole lot of dysfunctional people out there. That's why people seek therapy. They seek divination for answers. They seek the occult. Even as they say there's nothing to it, they're drawn to it. So as a metaphysicist, I totally get that.
Absolutely.
Because
I mean, you look at tarot's a law of attraction.
At the subconscious level, these people know from their divine source that there is something to this. And it's just the conscious mind shutting it down, because the conscious mind has been programmed since childhood with Disney movies and propaganda, talking about monsters and ETs being negative. And
that's right.
Anyway,
we're taught not to trust ourselves. We're taught not to trust that resonance that we have inside of us. We're taught that all the answers are around you. Oh, no, they're not inside of you. You're not a professional, you know.
And there's nothing to women's intuition, right? It's got to be logical. It's got to be logical. It's got to be empirical. And I am an empiricist. That means scientific. I do formulate hypotheses, seek to test them in a controlled manner. And as a psychologist, it's challenging because it's harder to control behavior. It's harder, not impossible, but harder.
Did you ever come across a book by Thomas Campbell, My Big Toe?
No.
That is fabulous. Highly recommended, because he's a nuclear physicist, and this is his theory of, philosophy and science and, consciousness, metaphysics. Brilliant book.
That's definitely on my wish list. My big toe.
You'd enjoy that.
Check that out.
It appeals to the science mind.
And let me take this opportunity I'm about to introduce my guest with her article, but let me welcome everyone who's just recently tuned in to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. I am your host, Jean Broida, and this show airs every Sunday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time Zone in the United States and Canada, and is broadcast worldwide on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. Head over there and subscribe if you will, please, and hit the like button and click the little bell if you'd like broadcast alerts. I welcome you to do so. You can be a founder of this worldwide phenomenon. I welcome you. We're also available and accessible through tabootopics.life/shows when we are broadcasting, and we are simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com, thanks to those fine folks over there. So let us pass to the next taboo topic. I can't wait to hear from Julie Parker about Delores Cannon and what happened after Julie's waking illumination. I'm not going to call it an NDE. I will call it an OOB, out of body experience.
Yeah.
But by your own account, it was, you didn't fear death or sense death or experience death at all. You were just sitting around reading a book in your bedroom, and all of a sudden, wham, you're in this other reality where it sounds like every entity was there, and you recognized many of them and apparently felt kinship and no threat. And then when you returned to your body, had 3 days of cathartic crying, therapeutic and cathartic crying, and your life was changed forever. And the day after that experience, tell us about Delores Cannon, who became known to you at that time.
Oh, it was just brilliant, like I said, because I came across her on YouTube. She was on the recommended page. And after that, over the months to come, I explored Delores Cannon. I explored Brian Weiss, Michael Newton, eventually ordered all of Delores. I watched every video she probably had out there, and started ordering her books as well. Like I said, there's 18 books, and her daughter also wrote a book on healing called Soul Speak. Her daughter's Julia Cannon, and she continues Dolores's work now. And Dolores's work, this is a beautiful method. 4 years later, hundreds of sessions later, I've never looked back. It's brilliant. I encourage people to go out and have a session. You can go to DoloresCannon.com and look up the Find a Practitioner tab, or they're also teaching her method. Delores did pass away in 2014, but they continue on with her work. And you can also go to DoloresCannon.com. And you can find out how you yourself can be trained in this method. One of the reasons this method was so important to me, because the theme of everything that I went through in that reawakening, or whatever you want to call that, the theme was love. The theme was remembering who you are. And that's very much how I viewed it. It was like I'd been reminded of something that I'd forgotten. And going forward into my work, that is the strongest theme in my work, that people have an opportunity to remember who they are, who they really are.
Didn't you have a passage to read from Delores Cannon's website to introduce people unfamiliar with her and the work you're doing?
Okay. I
know a little bit about Delores Cannon, but a lot of people perhaps are completely unfamiliar with her and what it is that you're doing, how she inspired you and what she inspired you to do.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have a passage from her website. What I do have is a passage from her Convoluted Universe book.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
This is a brilliant book. She wrote 5 books in that series. Her 18 books were all based on sessions. They were all based on information that came through sessions. And we were just touching on, time and things like that earlier. And oftentimes people always say to me, like, well, what if I've never had a past life? Well, we're eternal beings. So we've had lives. We perceive, when we're doing those sessions, that we're looking at a past life, but really, technically, what we're probably just looking at is a different timeline. One of the things I keep trying to explore myself and to understand better is when I've had this contact, is some of that contact also with me in the future, or what I perceive to be the future, if that makes any sense.
Please explain to viewers what you mean by a session, because I know what you mean, but I'm sure that many people don't understand what kind of session. What are we talking
Right.
about here?
Okay, well, QHHT session, and that's where you engage in a conversation for a couple hours with your practitioner. And then you're actually guided into a beautiful, relaxed state via Delores Cannon's method, which involves like some visualizations and that kind of thing. And you're taken into a beautiful, relaxed state. And, as you relax more and more, basically you're tuning out the world and you're tuning into yourself. And so you're usually guided through a couple past lives. And then there's also the opportunity to have a conversation with your highest self and to get the answers to like your bigger questions about what's going on in your life. One of the things that appealed to me about Dolores's work is not only do we see the past lives, and of course, sometimes people go off to other times and places that we might perceive as future. They have gone to many places. Not necessarily on this planet. The experiences are so diverse. I couldn't even sum that up. But the other thing that is absolutely brilliant about this too is that oftentimes people will visit a life between life portion when they segue from one past life into the next life. That space in between where we go, what are we doing? What happens? And I interpret that to be where I was during that initial experience. That place where we all come from.
And once again, I'm a stickler for definitions. You mentioned QHHT.
Yeah,
what
quantum,
does that stand for?
That's quantum healing hypnosis technique.
Okay, so for viewers, when we talk about sessions of the nature of Delores Cannon's technique, we're talking about basically, it sounds like a form of therapeutic hypnosis, if not medical hypnosis, not stage hypnosis. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely not stage hypnosis. And that's a completely different genre. That's something I actually always end up talking to my clients about because a lot of people are actually kind of intimidated when it comes to doing this. But really what it's like, I mean, if you think about scrolling on your iPhone or, looking on Facebook or gazing at a window or reading a book, that's alpha state. You're in a light state of trance. I mean, you're in and out of trance all day without even being aware of it. And so with QHHT, you're just going into a deeper relaxed state. You're actually still in control. The best part of you, your highest self, is always at the wheel anyhow. And so you're not going to start, quacking like a duck or something weird like that. You've just gone into a deeper relaxed state and you're allowing the pictures to come. And you're actually in and out of that state every single day of your life, whether or not you're aware of it, because it's right before you go to sleep and it's right before you wake up in the morning. Theta state.
Thank you for that further explanation. And now let's hear what Ms. Cannon has to say about it.
All right. Well,
and once again, the title of that book is?
This is The Convoluted Universe, Book 3.
The Convoluted Universe by Delores Cannon, as read by Julie Parker. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks so much. So anyhow, in this particular spot here, I think it's actually one of the first chapters, they were talking about reincarnation. And so I'll pick up here where it leaves off. About reincarnation. Now, the question that was asked, if a person has left this life and believes that he is going to be reincarnated into another life, can he choose the time and place, or is it out of his hands? The answer from the client that was under, nothing is out of your hands. You are fully and totally in control of your life. If you feel a drawnness to a particular country or time, the soul, so to speak, will automatically program the desire into the self. Desire was there before conscious thought. And so, I would like to live in Tibet in 2002. These thoughts are yours. These thoughts are your programming. Now, Delores then asked, can you go backward into a life of 10,000 BC as easily as you can go forward into 2001? In other words, if time is simultaneous and we think in terms of linear time, can you go backwards as well as forwards? Certainly. And how is that accomplished? How? It's already accomplished. The world as you know it, reality as you know it, is fully formed. It is not a piece of pie or a pie crust still waiting to be filled and baked. It is the pie. Where you happen to be right now is only where your conscious thought happens to be directed. All is all, but to make things less confusing, and because of the nature of this reality, you are aware of right now. That does not mean yesterday is not or never occurred, or tomorrow is not or never occurred. It is now. Where you choose to focus is where you place you in time, but all is.
Wow.
And so it's so interesting right now because I think what we're going through as a humanity, wow. We do definitely have a great awakening going on. And I think we're starting to recognize that anything that we've, my favorite quote right now is, the more I learn, the less I know. And that's just because nothing is as it seems.
I hear you. Okay, so you had an out-of-body experience. Mm-hmm. You were at YouTube. You saw a video by Delores Cannon, and it sucked you in. And then you watched everything that Delores did. And then what happened?
And then what happened?
To you?
Oh, well, those things happened. Yeah, those things were they happened over a span of months because I'd started having my own experiences in contact, which I kind of saw as separate than that. But I was trying to understand, and when I found Between Death and Life, that definitely gave me some understanding of what I'd experienced. I didn't actually read the Convoluted Universe series and everything until like the following year. A lot of my experience that happened, like so, they just happened organically. Like, sometimes you'll hear people talk about downloads, and it's like literally like having something dropped into your head, just like woof, there it is, right? And all of a sudden you understand everything about that. I experienced that a lot, like to the present day.
Tell me about your downloads. Are they pictures in your head, or ideas, or words, or an impulse, or all of the above?
I would absolutely, I would say all of the above, because when I'm in sessions as well, I have felt when I'm being divinely guided. I have like literally had something that it felt like it was dropped into my head, and it was like busting out to come out of my mouth. And I'll say it, I can feel, it's just like, it's literally like it drops in and it's coming straight out. They're very pictorial with me. When you hear about channelers and that kind of thing, that's not how my information comes. My information is very pictorial. And it comes at very random times, like when it was explained to me, about things like dimension and things like that. It's put into a frame of reference for me. But when I've had things, a concept, and that's how it comes to me. It does not come in an orchestrated sentence like, oh, and you will need to do this, this, and this. This is like a concept that's like dropped into my mind. And when it's dropped into my mind, I would actually kind of compare it to when you see your life flash before your eyes and you see everything all at once. That's how I came to understand what that was, because literally it's like all of a sudden I see all the information at the same time, and then I'm able to understand it.
Okay, so I'm trying to stick this. I'm a storyteller. Okay, so I like a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you had an out-of-body experience. You were on YouTube. You found Delores Cannon. You studied up, and that led you to want to learn her technique of self-awareness and regression, as in uncovering deeply buried memories or experiences. Well, memories are presumably memories of experiences. Talk about that process a little bit, if you will.
Oh, that's fantastic.
When you first encountered Delores Cannon's work, did you know right away, oh, I've got to learn this QHHT. I'm signing up right away.
I knew immediately. There was something about her and her energy. I knew I'd found my work. Like I did. I just knew. And I've never looked back. That's the truth of it. This is what I do full time now. There's a purity to it. And I'll tell you something, because I come from a heart-based place. And there's nothing more empowering than seeing your client empowered with themselves, right? Learning to listen to that voice inside of them. It's beautiful. You can actually see somebody's frequency come up.
When people come to you as clients,
Yeah.
and without revealing anyone's identity, of course,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would never do that. Yeah.
what do they want to get out of QHHT? What's their goals?
That's a variety of things, I think. I think sometimes, I mean, I've had clients that have had unusual, what you would regard as paranormal experiences. A lot of clients come because they do want to communicate with their highest self. Your highest self is your place of, it's your intuition and inspiration and epiphanies. It is the best part of you. But we've gone through a time in society where we feel very cut off and very separate from ourselves. And a lot of that is actually manipulation. It's, we've got constant phone notifications going off, and, it's like go out and buy more stuff, or sit and watch TV and zone out. We've lost touch with ourselves. But that tide is turning. That tide is turning. But to recognize that everything that you seek, there was a Rumi quote, I believe it was Rumi, everything that you seek, you already are. I don't know if I'm remembering the author correctly.
You just,
or not.
You had a little static there. Would you quote that Rumi or whoever it was again?
Yeah, I'm hoping it was Rumi. I'm hoping I remember that right. But everything that you seek, you already are. And that's the thing.
That's deep.
We have all the answers inside of us. This is not a magic wand. QHHT is a modality that is guiding you into a relaxed place, but you're the magic wand. You are so big, you've just forgotten. And it's like when I had that awakening moment at 48, I'd had experiences throughout my life, but nothing compared to that. And I absolutely knew after that moment that this was something to be shared. And it's okay to me if people don't get it. It's okay to me if people think I'm quack-a-doodle-doo, because I know what that was from a place of truth and resonance. All good.
I hear you. And if you've just tuned in, welcome to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. I am your host, Jean Broida, here with the very fascinating Julie Parker and her out-of-body experience, fully wakeful, taken to another realm where everybody was, and given new perspective, and set on a course to help other people understand why they feel how they feel and what they may have experienced, how to reconcile in a world that focuses on rational explanations to the exclusion of emotional or psychic experiences. Okay, how do you rationalize that when something irrational has happened to you, and you're pretty sure you're not crazy, but you'd like to have another person weigh in on it because maybe you are a little. I question my sanity all the time. I think that's very healthy. It's the crazy people who assume they're fine and everybody else is wrong, right?
Exactly. I think one of the other brilliant things that comes out of sessions as well is when we take people through a past life, they're actually guided to the end of that life as well. And they recognize that they really are eternal beings, that this is a seamless and fluid process. It is amazing how many people are actually scared of death, but they are guided through to that end of that life and moved over into, and maybe they move into the life between life portion, or maybe they jump into another life. Whatever's right for the client, their highest self's going to guide them there. This is a loving experience. But one of the things I think I love about this is when they're out of the body and it's so seamless. And people are scared that if they have a past life regression, they're going to see something terrible, and oh my gosh. And we have this insane thing about thinking we're going to be punished, that everything is a punishment. It's not like that at all. We have been all things. I mean, we've been every race. We've been both genders. Oh, and on that, this is really important for me to mention, because when I did have that experience 5 years ago, that reawakening kind of experience, that place that I was in, there was no politics, and there was no religion, and there was no gender. There was no
thank
nothing.
goodness.
It was a purity. It was a purity of who we are. Our true essence, the word to describe that would be essence. And that is something all of us carry with us. So even if we're, maybe having a tough day with somebody and our personalities are not necessarily getting along, to recognize that there is an essence of that person there that transcends whatever this physical interaction is.
Do clients come to you looking for their higher purpose in life?
Absolutely.
The meaning of life for them?
Yeah, and that's actually probably the top question. What is my life's purpose? You know, one of the brilliant pictures that was dropped into my head one day, and I was actually sitting there conversing with a client, though. You know, so many people that are in this reawakening state, or maybe they were lucky they didn't have 48 years of blackout like I did. It really made me realize that we are going through something as a humanity right now. We are experiencing a bigger awakening, and I think we're going to grow into a better human being. I think that's part of the process. But I've really recognized that people are scattered like transmitters, you know. And so oftentimes people are told, you know, well, you're helping hold the light, and they're like, I don't want to just hold the light. You know? What's
And
my purpose?
To what end are we light workers working? What's the goal? What's our goal? Our
The
collective
brilliant
goal?
thing, you know, one of the things that came through to me though is because everything is actually energy and everything is frequency. And so we can look at those that we admire on the stage and they're brilliant speakers and they're able to put out that energy and that intention. But then you can have somebody a client that I met not long ago, she's absolutely brilliant. She's a much older lady. And she has the ability to just sit there, and she would go and visit her husband in a aged home. And you have people in a variety, you know, variety of illnesses, variety of stages of dementia, and that kind of thing. And this woman is able to just sit there and project love and energy to this person across the room who's crying and moaning, right? Because she's in the later stages of dementia. And she is definitely a higher frequency being, and nobody's ever heard of her. And she's just beautiful. She's brilliant. And so it is about us. It's about our connection. And bravo for those people that can get up on the stage and speak so eloquently and write the books and everything. You know, but there's so many people everywhere. And I'm starting to recognize them as little earth angels.
I like that
You know,
image.
right?
And you know, you talked about people fearing death.
Yeah.
That's very true. A lot of people fear the unknown, they fear death, and they fear what will happen to their survivors after they die. All of these are legitimate feelings.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, as a Toastmaster, a person a club member of a club that promotes an international nonprofit organization that promotes better communication through giving speeches and being a leader in a club or in the community.
Yeah.
More people, polls show that more people fear public speaking than death itself. As a psychology person, I wonder at this, I marvel at this, and how our enculturation has beaten back our voices. Think about children. Children never fear to express themselves. They never do. Right. Sometimes it's hard to get them to shut up when you want them to, but they are imaginative and creative and effervescent quite often, ebullient, meaning bubbling over with their enthusiasm. Yeah. And I hate to say it, but in the United States, in my experience at least, public school whipped it out of me, not literally beat me. Yeah. In my day, there was corporal punishment in school as the occasional paddling. It wasn't all the time, but in certain circumstances, it was considered warranted, and the parents opted in. The parents were not sideswiped by this. They knew. So the country was different. The culture was different. I'm not defending it. I'm not saying we should go back to that or that it worked particularly well or didn't. Just saying times were different in the 1950s, 1960s in the United States. And we've come a long way from that, but perhaps not for the greater good in terms of there is something to be said for fearing corporal punishment to stay in line. The better tool is to have an interior voice or interior guide saying, not that I fear corporal punishment as a consequence of my actions, but I just know with my moral compass that doing this thing is wrong and therefore I won't do it. Obviously, some kids lack this moral compass. And when they do, seems to me that the occasional well-placed smack on the fanny may do a world of good. Now, I know I'll probably get some repercussion from that statement. I'm not endorsing child abuse in any way, shape, or form, but I'm saying that when you allow behavior to go unchecked and unchallenged, there's nothing to stop it. And that expresses itself as we get older and into adulthood. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a lot of people running around in the world now who have unresolved issues because there's never been a chance to resolve them. And that's something that the QHHT is proposing to do. Am I right? It's proposing to resolve some of those deep-seated emotional issues.
Absolutely. I mean, so much happens when we change our perception, and really that's what it does. It gives you the ability to change your perception. Because, you know, for so many generations, I mean, they did their level best, right? And times were hard. But it was almost coming from a more primitive way of, that's what was done to me, so that's what I'm going to do too. But things are changing so rapidly right now. And when I look at the children now, oh, it's extraordinary. If I look at my own granddaughters even, these kids are fast. These kids are quick. You know, I look at my baby picture compared to my granddaughters when they were babies. I look like a baby potato. Okay. I was reared on carnation milk. I was propped in a corner with my glass bottle, you know. And these kids now are brilliant. And I think part of the issue is our school systems, I think, are really outdated. I think things are changing so rapidly right now. There's a quickening going on. But when I look at these children and I look at the light in their eyes, you know, if you look at a 2-year-old, you know, wandering around and they're just in their own little zone, they're just like, they're walking around in theta state, right? They're just
well, I know that you know that Delores Cannon talked about waves, incarnational waves of star seeds.
Yes.
Which is where I got into her. I'm not the student of Delores Cannon that you are, but I am a fan, if you will. I'm a follower.
Absolutely.
And I watched one of her videos on YouTube where she talked about a small wave of extraterrestrial beings who chose to incarnate in human bodies in the late 1950s, early 1960s to be a vanguard, a forward wave of these beings who would help humans raise consciousness and look at the universe, not only the world, but the universe differently. Absolutely. And then a second wave came in, these star seeds, so-called star seeds came in 20 years later. And then a third wave came in 20 years after that. And that third wave she called indigo children.
Oh, yeah.
Now those indigo children are growing up, but they typically, I've heard them described as having big, dark eyes. They're hyper smart, very creative, uncanny in what they know. They're plugged in to the matrix, if you will, the divine source. Yeah. And I was wondering what the age of your youngest client has been up to now. How young are you doing children?
I'm not typically that, they don't encourage us to do, like, you know, because you're getting into past life regression and everything. And, you know, for kids, it's hard enough. So the cutoff age is usually typically regarded as, you know, 17 or 18.
Is that about the age of your youngest client? 17 or 18? Okay.
Yes. And, well, I had one client that was younger than that, but that was with the parent present. You know, that was not the norm kind of thing. The parent and the child requested this. And so, you know, all pictures were taken.
You told me that these sessions are marathon. They go a full 8 hours. Is that right?
Sometimes. I mean, I can't speak for all practitioners. Everybody is going to put out their frequency and attract the client that they're meant to attract, right? Everything's always, you know, law of attraction. But, you know, I am very much interested in people having a cathartic journey, a shift in their life. So, yeah, sometimes that means I might have a longer day. But you know what? Sometimes we've had a more colorful journey. Sometimes we've had a lot of things happen and we got a few bags to unpack.
Now, we met through Grant Cameron, UFO and consciousness researcher par excellence. And
Yeah, he's awesome.
I felt an immediate affinity toward you,
Yeah.
suggesting that we're in this together. We're in this light work together.
That's right.
And I had read Messages from Michael decades ago, which is a two-parter. There's Messages from Michael, and then there's more Messages from Michael. These books are about a group of people in California, and mostly in California, and some of the members were in other places as well, but most of them were in California, and they assembled physically to basically run seances, what we might call seances, where they opened themselves to divine source. And according to them, at least, they tapped into the Archangel Michael. And that's where Messages from Michael comes from. These are messages from the Archangel. Okay.
Yeah.
And I devoured these books. I still have these, and they are highly bookmarked or tabbed. I put little, I don't like to mark in books, but I will occasionally. I put little flags on pages of interest by the things that interest me for further review. And these books have flags, little Post-its all over them. And one of the concepts that I've kept all these years is that at source, at divine source, God, if you will, personalities are cast off as soul fragments, and that these fragments are composed of 17 splinters. And these 17 splinters are all aspects of the same soul. And they look for each other when they have incarnated on earth. They want to find each other and get this completion again, this completion of consciousness. How does that jive with the work that you're doing, Julie?
That's really interesting.
Or does it jive? And the other idea being that people form cadres, that there are splinters or soul fragments of 17, but then there are larger cadres, people who incarnated to find each other and work together on earth to do stuff metaphysically, as in raise consciousness or bring awareness.
I do.
How does that jive with your reality?
I do actually. I do believe in that. I think we, like attracts like, right? And I think everything is divine. Like, I mean, really, like when people cross over and they recognize that they have, like, we have soul family. I think we also probably have ET soul family. But we have soul family, and everything is like, for instance, like with my colleague and my best friend, we met one day there in 1992. I think it was January of 1992. And we were thick as thieves after that. She has very much been my soul sister all the way along. And she actually also does the QHHT as well. But
this notion that there are alien or ET soul family stands up when you look at accounts from experiencers who said, I was not afraid. I felt unconditional love, which is similar to what you felt, I believe. I felt love and acceptance. I wasn't threatened. There were no monsters per se.
That's right. It wasn't.
And women who agree to do a hybridization program must be feeling something positive to be agreeable to that they think it's for the greater good somehow. Have you run into any people who believe, or has it come out in their hypnotherapy sessions, that they have been involved in being as part of this hybrid program?
Yes, absolutely.
And how's that shake down?
It reminds me of Sherry Wild, who I came across in my first year as well. Sherry Wild spoke to, she was having missing time, and, I think things that would have been termed as abductions, but what it was called, the title of her book is The Forgotten Promise. And I think that's actually what people come to recognize some of that as. It's a contract that they had made prior to coming in. It's just, well, you're here in the 3D and running around having your experiences here, and they've dropped that veil. You forget about some of these other things, right? Now, it's a little different than the hybridization, but I'm thinking very specifically, though, about a client. And this client was middle-aged. And there had been, you know, they'd gone through quite a journey, and they'd gone through a lot of trauma and everything as a young person. But one of the things that upset them was that they were scared of the dark still in middle age. And the reason they were scared of the dark is because when they were a young child, the mother would work around the building that they were living in, and the mother would leave at night, and this child would be alone in their bed, and this child was terrified. And so here she was in middle aged, and I need to get past this. I don't know why this is happening. But this child was actually, they were born in another country. They'd gone through a lot of trauma and had a lot of, you know, really unfortunate things happen to them. And these, she was perceiving what she thought to be monsters coming out of her closet, and they would stand around her bed. Well, these monsters turned out to be her ET family. These monsters were coming to remove the trauma. These monsters were coming to be with her so that she wouldn't be alone. But from the perception of a child, she was reading this as completely different. And so all these years, she didn't want to be alone in the house, you know, and it turned out to be something actually very loving, very benevolent that had been taking place. It's just we have limited perception.
Earlier, you mentioned that they put ideas in your head. Who do you think they are?
I think that's actually kind of varied, because I really definitely have a sense of interactions being with a number of different groups. I've been asked in the past, oh, you know, who are you affiliated with? And I'm actually, I don't know, seems to be like my friendship base, a variety of people.
What do they mean by that term affiliation? Do they mean like Pleiades or Orion?
Yeah,
or...
I think a lot of people that have had these experiences, I think, you know, you identify to a particular race, but there's so many races beyond our conception. It's innumerable. And I've had distinct interactions with beings that might be able to present themselves physically, but I've also had interactions with beings that I know did not take a physical body, that I would consider interdimensional.
Why do you think you had your out-of-body experience? I don't know if you can answer this or not, but I'm curious. Why do you think you had that experience? Why do you think you were led to Delores Canyon? Why do you think you started doing quantum healing hypnotic therapy?
I think I'd always been a heart-based person. Like, I had at one point actually run a nonprofit, and I'd worked in other genres, and I would always inevitably end up being like the informal HR person, right? I like to look out for other people and help where I can. I was definitely at a crossroads in my life, pondering what my next move was going to be, but I wanted it to be something fulfilling. I wanted to be who I felt I was meant to be, but it kept feeling like I was finding jobs / careers that just were not a good fit. They were not that. When you're doing something that you're supposed to be doing, you never work another day in your life. You love your life, and that's where I'm at. I love my life. I love my clients. I love these beings that I know show up and guide us, you know. You know, that was the awakening. That was, okay, Julie, it's time for you to remember who you are. That's what that was. And everything else after that, it was just like walking down the yellow brick road. It was like one thing after another, after another, after another. Like, I couldn't believe how things opened up. And so because I know that I'm divinely guided, and we all are, whether we realize that or not, I trust what comes. I just trust it. Now, I never used to be like that. I would second guess myself, and I'd stay up all night stewing over it. And, you know, and so many times I actually probably sabotaged myself back then, because I thought, oh, no, that can't be right. That can't be, you know. But I tell people, I'm like, listen to that voice inside of you. Listen to your heart. It does know where it's going. The left brain, that's all, you know, chatter and chaos and, you know.
We also had a close encounter, if you will, on a new show that I'm doing with the producer of Global Enlightenment Radio Network and the owner of that network, Daryl Neely Sr., who goes by the moniker Odin. We've started a Tarot Tuesday, and Julie phoned in our first show. This is a call-in show on Tuesday nights. The time is in flux. I signed up for an hour, and we ended up going 2 hours, and had to turn away, I think, 5 callers who had questions. But Julie got there plenty early. She was happy to call in and get a free tarot reading over the airwaves. And you want to talk a little bit about, not necessarily the content of that, but how card reading and ESP, how that fits into this whole paradigm or reality or experience.
Card reading is fantastic. You know, so many years it had the association of being like the occult or something dark. It's not. It's law of attraction. You're literally, you know, if you know, when you're doing your cards, you're literally, that is the direction you're headed in right now. That is what you are attracting to you right now. So I always have the attitude too, if people don't like the particular reading, well, then you need to change something about your current path, because this is what you're bringing to yourself right now. But I also find it, I mean, the cards are much older, I think, than what they're ever given credit for. I mean, they're spoken of quite in depth as well in the Law of One series. You know, you look at things like, you know, the death card, for instance, you know, and people are like, oh, the death card. And it's like, no, death is transformation. It is like shedding your skin. It's moving on to a new phase. And we need that. We need to grow and evolve as human beings. You look at the Tower card, and people think that card looks so it's so scary because you got the tower and lightning and
people falling out of a building.
Right? And they're like, oh my God. And it's like, no. Because you don't build a house on a rotting foundation, right? So we need to release those things from our life that no longer suit us, no longer fit us. Think about your favorite outfit when you were like 14 or 19. You know, I'm 53 now. Even if I could wear it, I wouldn't, right? We need to be able to keep moving and growing and expanding. So I love tarot. Tarot, I think, is a fabulous tool. I use tarot as a meditation tool, actually. I'm definitely a diehard collector. I curate my collection, but I've got 70 decks here that I'm looking at.
Oh my word.
Right now. I love tarot. But I use it as a meditation tool. I have a beautiful shaman deck over there, and I will just basically put out there, okay, what is something that I need to contemplate today? What is something that I need to understand or learn about? And I'll shuffle out a card, and it is bang on every time, because it's law of attraction, right?
I've always regarded tarot, astrology, pendulums, dowsing rods, these are all means to an end. And what I'm hearing about quantum healing hypnotic therapy is that it is another means to an end, and a very powerful one.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, in the same way that I had my multidimensional experience that I spoke about at the beginning, you know, people experience that as well in their own sessions. Sometimes they might have a loved one come, or they've left the body after leaving that past life. People have multi-sensory experiences. Sometimes, you know, in that hypnosis, it all kind of depends, I think, on how that person is geared and what they're ready for. They're never going to be given anything they're not ready for. That's a fact, right? But the emotion.
Would that explain why some people haven't had an out-of-body experience, a near-death experience, haven't had direct communication with other, well, say, out-of-body eternal beings? Any thoughts along that line?
You know what I think about that? And this is something I do say to my clients. We do have those experiences at night. It's just we're not remembering. So when I had that experience 5 years ago, I believe I've done that at night many times before, but I wasn't retaining that, you know.
What's the point of experiencing things if you don't retain it in consciousness? What do you think?
Because this is all this is a play, this is school. And so if we retain it all, it might rob us maybe of some of the experiences we were wanting to have, some of the things we were wanting to learn, right? I mean, we come in here for a massive variety of reasons, and I do think there's a large amount of us here. I question, when you look at the population of the globe, I do think a lot of us are present at this moment in time because we are evolving into something better.
I believe it was Buddha who talked about there are two ways to learn. You can learn through joy, or you can learn through suffering.
Yes.
And when we talk about soul agreements, where people made deals basically and set out goals before coming into a human body, a lot of travail and hardship takes on a brand new meaning for people. In other words, I opted in for this. Why did I do that? Why would anyone opt in to be a Holocaust survivor, for example? Why would it, or a victim of a tyrannical society that was bloodthirsty, ruthless, and killed millions of people? What was I supposed to learn from that?
Absolutely. But that's how limited our perception is too, because I've actually had people that have actually gone back to the Holocaust, but I've actually also had clients, for instance, one that was a child from a family, from a Nazi family, who had no concept of what was going on. And that was one of the past lives she visited. So it's all about perception. And the thing is, because when our perception is in too close and in too tight, and we don't know that when we pull out, when we're able to pan out and see what the bigger picture is. Like I said, everything's divine. Everything is clockwork universe, like the gears of a clock. There's no accidents. There's no coincidences. And so when somebody elects to come in, we don't know. Okay, if I was to pull an example of, say, somebody in a family getting very sick, this is not just something that has happened to that particular individual. This is something impacting the people that are around that individual. And that's not just family and friends and extended family. That's also the doctors and the nurses and the lab technicians. Everything is connected. Everything. And this is why something like Reiki works. You know, when people do distance Reiki, you can be sitting here right now and you can send healing energy to somebody in Norway or in China, and it will have an impact. You know, you think about the harmonic convergence, I believe in 1987, when they did the mass meditation. We are energetic beings. This is all frequency.
I remember the harmonic conversions, and I have to tell you, I looked at the math behind it and I wasn't that well impressed. But be that as it may, I'm totally in favor of people getting together and raising consciousness for whatever reason. Yeah. If you need a harmonic convergence to get that going, okay, fine.
There's actually something going on today, even. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But,
and you know what? There's no right or wrong to this.
Getting back to soul agreements and how people are living out their lives. Lots and lots of people, more and more people, are being drawn to a variety of paranormal topics, from UFOs to Bigfoot to Loch Ness to, well, all kinds of things, right? Paranormal topics.
Yeah.
For people drawn to paranormal topics who don't experience paranormal phenomenon or not much, okay, so they don't have the out-of-body experience. They don't have voices, if you will. They may have intuition and impulses, but for people who don't see the spaceship, who don't go aboard the spaceship, and yet are compelled to study the topic, are interested in those shows on TV, are interested in this show because we talk about such things, is that perhaps because part of our soul agreement is that we won't have that direct contact, that validation, that kind of undeniable validation when it's happened to you. Other people may deny that it happened to you, but when it happens to you, it's subjective. It becomes part of your reality.
Absolutely.
Perhaps it's because and I'm including myself in this category. So far, the skies have not opened. I have not had any great visions. I am dead set on my task and my goals. I know I'm going in the right direction. My soul guides tell me this is the way to go. And I get validations by seeing ones on digital displays and things like that. I mentioned this on another show. I'll have an epiphany, a thought, and there's a validation, 1111. That's kind of a positive.
And when that experience happened to you as a child, though, when you saw that being, your place of resonance, you knew you weren't making it up.
At the deepest subconscious level.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Absolutely. And we all have that place of resonance, and we have to trust that. We've been taught to doubt ourselves. We've been taught that we're separate from God, from Creator, from each other. And look at the metaphor of our community, our society, our global society right now. Physical distancing, social isolation, right? Now there's a taboo topic I'd jump into.
I know it. I know it. These are interesting times, as the Chinese would say in that curse, may you live in interesting times. And I know that viewers understand, at least subconsciously, that we have skirted around current events, even though this is turning into what's going on in the world right now has major conspiratorial overtones.
It sure does.
There's a lot going on that is going on beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And like it or lump it, the world is changing right in front of us. Yeah. I write about this stuff almost daily, and I use this show as a break from that. Yeah. Not that I'm denying that it exists or whitewashing it, but I'm convinced we get enough of it elsewhere. Yeah. And certainly it is a major, major, major taboo topic, and at some point might dedicate basically an entire show to that.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is how the internet and mass media are contributing to this phenomenon. The public reaction would not be possible if we didn't have the extent of social networking that we do have. If we didn't have the internet, the world has changed, and
it has.
And I don't even know where that's even going. But the world has changed. We're changing. Stuff's happening.
I think what's really important for people to recognize right now, while there's so much about this we don't understand, that is actually part of our perception right now. We don't know everything that's taking place. We understand what we're being shown right now in the media, or subjective to our own experience. But I think it's always healthy for us to remember too, that this beingness that we have right now here in this moment, this is a facet of a much bigger diamond. If you want to look at the bigger diamond as your soul, or, your highest self, whatever name you want to put to that. And this is one facet of your beingness. And we have all chosen to be here right now at this particular moment in time. And I wish I understood that better. Now, I did have like a few precognitive things happen along the way regarding this situation now. Nothing big and dramatic, just little signposts along the way where just recently I've been going, aha, now I understand. But this is also an opportunity right now. We might have to, social distance, physical distance, and things like that. But this is also maybe a moment for us to actually be able to go within and to actually really consider what is important, and turn off the cell phone once in a while, and to explore aspects of our creativity. The fastest way to raising our frequency is to do anything that brings you joy. I get clients all the time. They're like, oh, I can't meditate. And I'm like, oh, heck, I can barely meditate either. But you know what? When you put yourself into a place of joy and you are doing something creative, that could be sketching, knitting, cooking, gardening, playing outside with your children, sitting under a tree. Every time you do something like that, you have immediately raised your frequency. And as soon as you raise your frequency, you're open to the promptings of your highest self, of your soul, of your diamond. And so right now, there's so much fear permeating everything, but anything that a person can do right now to just bring them that moment of peace, you don't have to lay there and meditate for an hour and a half. Hey, if you can meditate for an hour and a half or do yoga or something, awesome, do that. But maybe that thing is like you're just sitting out under a tree, like I said, or you're just out with your dog, you know, in the backyard or something. And dogs are fantastic. Dogs are so present. Do things to bring yourself into the present moment. Do things that bring you joy, bring you peace. You immediately raise your frequency. And with that, you also make yourself less susceptible to things like, I don't know, a cold.
Well, I was about to say, when you dwell in a positive state of mind, it has a positive impact on your immune system.
Yes, it does.
Studies have shown
Absolutely.
that positive self-talk and doing things that make you joyful, whatever those are,
Absolutely.
secrete hormones that actually have a physiological effect for good, for good health. And the opposite is true. If you live a life of misery, whether it has been imposed on you or you've accepted it as your lot in life, it reflects in your health, which is more likely to suffer, more likely. I'm not going to state categorically that it's this way and that way and the other way, just talking about trends. And again, back to affirmations, the power of affirmations.
Yeah.
When I studied psychology, we made fun of the guy, Coué, who came up with the little catechism, every day in every way, I get better and better. Yet, as a positive affirmation, it's very powerful. And if you actually believe it, there's something to be said for mind over matter.
Absolutely.
However, it's not a Pollyanna aphorism, every day in every way, I get better and better. Well, there is some wishful thinking perhaps to that, but you got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
If you wake up and say, oh my gosh, another gosh darn day, and I'm really not looking forward to this, I don't want to get out of bed, bad things are going to happen, it's the same old, same stuff, different day, that's going to be your reality. That
is what you're manifesting. Absolutely. Absolutely. When you were speaking about health, absolutely. There's some brilliant speakers about this. Like if you look at Dr. Joe Dispenza, you know, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden. There's Greg Braden's got a brilliant video out there on the internet, and you can see a live tumor healing, and it's done through the power of intention and belief. Just brilliant.
Wow, what's that name?
Oh my gosh. If people go onto YouTube and if they type in Greg Braden, Greg, Gregg, Braden.
Okay.
And
Braden, Greg.
Yeah.
Braden.
And if you type in tumor healing, and I've watched people heal themselves the same way, but what's beautiful about this is it's actually shown through, I guess it was an ultrasound. It was shown on an ultrasound screen, which is a brilliant video. But this is who we are. Okay, so if this is all a hologram, and if we're manifesting our lives in every given minute, one of the definite correlations that I've recognized through doing like several hundred sessions now is that when somebody has an illness arise, there has been a trigger, and that trigger is always emotional. And so just to put it out there, if somebody suddenly developed psoriasis, or if somebody suddenly developed hypertension or something like that, you know what? Go back 6 months or a year, maybe 18 months, but it pretty typically shows up within that previous, I'd say year. You will find a trigger event, right? Where something changed. And
at the emotional level.
Absolutely. Something changed on the emotional level. And if you go to the Law of One, which is like one of my favorite texts ever, I read all sorts of stuff, but the Law of One is definitely one of my favorite things. You will hear so many times when people have had an interaction with a serious illness, and it was a cathartic experience in their life. Absolutely cathartic. It was life-changing. All of a sudden, they're rediscovering and remembering who they are. And so there's so many ways to come to this, And sometimes with illness, it is your body speaking to you. Sometimes when people have gone through a lot of challenges as a small child and There was conditions that followed them through life. Now, there are circumstances too where people have, on some sort of soul level agreed to have a particular experience. And it's not just an experience for them, it's an experience for all those around them that are involved in interacting with them. When a child, is born with a condition, that this is not bad karma. There's no such thing as good karma and bad karma. Karma stands for action. And so this child coming in with whatever condition it is that they might have come in with, this is an experience for all of these beings around them, all of these, family, friends, medical, you name it, volunteers, whoever that would be. Does that
This
make
is
sense?
Fascinating. I could talk about this forever, but I spy with my little eye that we're nearing the end of the April 19th, 2020 episode of Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. And this is the time in the show where I thank my guests, or guest in this case. Again, Dr. Chuck Kennedy was scheduled for the show and life happened to him. He was unable to join us, but I'll have him on another show. Fortunately, Julie and I are big talkers, and we have used up and filled up 2 hours very pleasantly. This is the part of the show where I thank my guests for making this show possible. I could do this on my own, but what would be the fun of that? There's no dialogue when I'm talking to myself. So thank you, Julie, for being here. And please share with our international viewership on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, and simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. Share a little bit about your current projects, how people might contact you, and where you're at and where you're going.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, first, thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. All right. My current projects, well, like everybody else, I'm spending a lot of time at home right now, but that's also given me an opportunity to work on some other studies I'm engaged in. And I've been planting my little balcony garden and those kind of things. I do my work full time when I am able to work. I'm very passionate about it. I'm located here in Edmonton, Alberta. It's a beautiful journey. So I recommend people, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, this modality is found around the world. This modality is in Egypt and Turkey and Norway, and it's everywhere. And so if this is something of interest to you, go to DeloresCannon.com and you can look under the Find a Practitioner tab. Or if you're actually interested in maybe pursuing the modality yourself and you feel a calling to it and it's resonating to you, you know what? Go to the there's also a tab on DeloresCannon.com, and now I've gone blank, but I believe it might say something like Learn QHHT. And if you do have an opportunity to go on YouTube, type in Delores Cannon, and you're going to find a massive plethora of her work. What a beautiful woman. What a beautiful woman. And she did so much to awaken this society. And I always wonder if she ever had the opportunity to realize that before she passed away. And that's the other thing too, because sometimes people are like, oh, she's passed away, but her daughter, who was always by her side, her right-hand man, has carried on Dolores's work, and they do live teaching events around the world and that kind of thing. You can learn level 1 QHHT online. It's very thorough. It's actually like being taught by Delores herself. They filmed Delores shortly before she passed away, teaching an entire course.
If people go to DeloresCannon.com and look for someone to do QHHT on them, will they find your name?
Oh, they would. I mean, like you want to find somebody in your region, right?
And your region is?
I'm in Alberta. So I have people.
Canada.
Yes, in Canada.
For people who live in caves, Alberta is in Canada.
That's right, it is.
And you are available, my dear, for sessions. You prefer the one-on-one, don't you? The face-to-face?
I very much prefer the one-on-one. Our particular method is done one-on-one. And so it should be, because you know what? It's quite a journey. And there's a beautiful energy present, when we do this work. Oh.
Now, you had told me too that you're much more of an experiencer, a hands-on experiencer than a note taker or a writer or an author, and I certainly respect that. I always want authors to promote their own works. In this case, do you have a website or something you would want people to go check you out?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I do have a website. There's actually two. They're both tied into my QHHT. So if you go to EdmontonQHHT.com, or if you go to JulieParkerQHHT.com. And sometimes I put up blog posts. I've actually got 6 posts sitting in drafts, and now that means I'm going to have to get at them and get them put up. So there's some new content.
I feel you, sister girlfriend. My tech producer just fixed my website, www.lightwork111.com. It had some gremlin activity going on, and here I am on the show telling people, go to www.lightwork111.com. When you go there, you get error 404, page not found. So I apologize for that, but you can go there now, and you can read some of my articles there. I'm also published as Lightworker 111 at thedailyconspiracy.com. We get in some politics there, and people have told me they don't like my politics. Okay, fine. I'm actually a libertarian, and I can bash both sides of any party, all sides of any party or any issue. I'm a skeptic. I don't care. Sticks and stones and all that stuff. But if you've got a morbid curiosity and want to hear more about that aspect of my life, head over there, Lightworker 111. I do have a new webpage, tabootopics.life, which is under construction. And please, if you have stories to tell or experiences to share, if you'd like to be a guest panelist on the show, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, which airs Sunday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone, United States and Canada, please contact me, Jean at lightwork111.com. That's JEAN at light, LIGHT, work, WORK, 111 for synchronicity.com. And I welcome your emails. I do try to answer all emails, and I am looking for people who have had experiences, who like to read, who like to write, who like to talk, and can fill time for our wonderful viewers. Thank you so much. We have a rousing following already. It's really incredible how popular Taboo Topics are. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to reach so many people and hopefully do some upbuilding, because that's my bag, baby. I want people to feel better after listening to the show and watching the show. That's my goal.
Awesome. This is
final thoughts, Julie? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed this so much. And I think right now, anything that gives people an opportunity to come forward and speak about their experiences is a beautiful thing, right?
I totally agree. And I am personally promoting softer voices.
Yeah.
Just plain folks. You don't have to be famous to be on this show. I don't mind it if you are, but I certainly don't expect it. In our culture today, there's perhaps an overemphasis on fame and notoriety, whereas average everyday people have plenty to share. Would we just stand still enough to listen?
They really do, because I'll tell you something. I'm just trying to pull a number off the top of my head, but I think it's like fairly accurate, that I'm pretty confident through about 40% of the clients that I have met, people have had experiences that have made them go, you know, and that's for a variety of reasons, whether it was like, you know, experiencing, you know, astral travel or dreams, seeing a light in a room that had no source. That kind of thing. And so I think it'd be a really great thing if people came forward with that, because, you know, this is normal.
I agree entirely.
People are having this and they're scared to talk about it. And the more people that talk about it, the more empowered we get with who we really are.
I agree. There's strength in numbers and there's comfort in validation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So thank you for tuning in once again to the April 19th, 2020 edition of Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. I've had a wonderful time with my guest panelist, Julie Parker, and that's our take on it. Thank you for listening, and see you next week. on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. Give it a subscribe and a like, and simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. I think regular viewers know what's coming next. It's time for me to say, for now, over and out.
That one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.